All right, we're going to be breaking down a deal here that is kind of run of the mill that you'll see when it comes to doing the creative ninja approach, but also going towards talking to real estate agents and doing creative finance deals. I got one of my students here, Steven Cabanas. Thanks for being here, Steven.
Of course, man.
So we're going to look at one of your deals that you did back in October. It was one that was this was in Colorado, right?
Yeah, Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs. So we're going to look at one of your deals and kind of talk about the numbers behind it and ultimately kind of what we made on the deal and how this whole thing progressed. Give me a little rundown. Like, how did this conversation start? What was how did you find this lead? What happened here?
So this one actually was pretty early stages of when we first joined the mentorship, maybe July, but then I guess a couple of weeks after we had come across Colorado Springs agents and reached out to this one. They didn't pick up the phone call, just put them in a little drip campaign, and they just kind of kept on getting hit up with our text messages through the CRM. I guess in late September, so that was at the very beginning of August. So then late September, agent just got a message, and then she asked who is this? I'm sorry. And then I saw it come through on the CRM, and then I just ended up messaging saying, hey, we originally reached out for, Chantilly Place. We weren't able to get an offer in. I don't know how she even knew that we were coming in. I'm sure she was getting hit up a lot for low equity, that kind of stuff. So she was assuming. And so she just kind of said, let's hop on a phone call and see, I want to know your process. And so then ended up getting on a call with her, just kind of talking through the numbers.
So it all started via text message?
Yeah. So it was just a follow-up drip for, I guess, initially missed the boat at the very beginning of August, and just the follow-up.
Which is what happens most times. What's the likelihood of us getting, I don't know, what's the likelihood of us getting the agent on the phone the first time we call them or the second time, right? Normally, and honestly, I don't know, I feel like a lot of agents are more responsive via text sometimes too. So
most definitely, for sure.
So we reached out to them, put them into a drip campaign. The CRM texted them back and just kind of followed up with them. Obviously, you guys stay on top of your follow-ups as well. But after it kind of went through that entire process, then one day they just responded to it and was like, okay, well, who is this? That property was still available. And then you guys progressed the conversations from there.
Yeah. I assume that a level of pain started to ensue for this agent and wanting to get this one sold pretty soon.
Yeah, that typically happens, especially with creative on-market deals. It's just a matter of time, right? If it's not 30 days, 60 days, it'll eventually happen. So this one we identified from the list that you pulled, was this just an active listings in Colorado Springs that had low equity? Is that how you went about it?
Yeah, for sure. Low equity. I think it was 15%, through batch leads, ended up pulling for all Colorado. Knowing that Colorado Springs, there's a bunch of active duty people, probably moving here and there. So those VA loans probably come up a lot for low equity. So
for sure,
that was a good market.
Yeah, and we can even see here. So obviously we pull our list through batch to get this information, but we can see even on Zillow they bought this property for $320, guys, and they bought it in 2021. So they're not going to they have paid down the principal very much. In fact, when we had the conversation, they owed $297 or something on it, 300, right around that number. So, and then they had listed it for 344, and then it didn't sell, then 334, and then 334. So what we like to do in these scenarios is we try to figure out, like what Steven's saying, equity, right? We don't go outside of 15% equity. We try to stay less than 15%. And equity is basically just a number that's the difference between what they sell for and actually put in their pocket versus what they owe against the property, right? So if I'm selling my house for 300 and I owe 280, I don't have 20 grand in equity, 300 minus 280. I actually have 300 minus all the cost it cost me to sell the house, which is agent fees, closing costs, all that stuff, which is typically around 7%. And then I have what's left between whatever that number is minus what I owe against the mortgage, assuming I don't have to take any sort of repairs. So in this scenario, when they were trying to sell for 335, you multiply that by, you take 7% off the top, they're basically going to write a check to close their house. They're not walking away with hardly any money. So we look at those scenarios and we say, okay, well, if this person's that motivated to sell, let's figure out a number where we can still get them paid. We can pay them more money than even if they sold on market at retail by structuring something a little bit more creative. So you reached out and you had a conversation with them. And what we like to focus on is the cash that they need to walk away, right?
Right, exactly.
So in a scenario like this, where they owe close to 300, and we knew that they would probably have to write a check to close their house if they had to pay commissions and stuff because they didn't really hardly have any equity. We first look at like, okay, well, how much ideally would they want to walk away with? Because these kind of deals don't make sense unless they, number one, cash flow. So the cool thing about this deal, guys, is when we look at it is, do you remember what the mortgage payment here on this one was?
Yeah, I believe it was like 1700.
Yeah, $1,700. So the first thing that we would look at is, yeah, obviously we know the property are typically, especially with this on-market creative approach, specifically around like the creative ninja stuff, is you're going to find that most properties are move-in ready. And if I zoom in on Chantilly, I like going to Zillow and I like figuring out what the rents are. So the first thing I'm going to look at for creative is, will this property cash flow as a rental property? Okay. So here we are. This is our neighborhood. Looks like all these properties are probably basically the same. You can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up rents. So I know I have a 3.1 and I'm going to try to find something similar. So it's a 4.2. Here's a 3.2.5 for 1990, 3.2.5. That doesn't look that great. This at 1990. Yeah, this is super dated. You have a 3.2.5, 1,500 square feet for 2,300. So I could probably say our property being in good condition would probably rent out somewhere around 2,000 to 2,100 bucks, something like that. And when I see that our mortgage payment is $1,700 and I could rent it out for 2,100, okay, it could potentially cash flow a little bit of money. But the cool thing is, because this one has so little equity, I could get into this deal with just a few $1,000s and have a cash flowing rental property. So not only would this make sense for me as an investor, but Steven, you guys right now, your goals in your business is it to buy these creative deals or is it wholesale these creative deals?
Right now, since we're super new to the game, I would say we're wholesaling, especially the creative ones right now, and then until we've kind of seen a few cross our desk.
Right. And then buy the ones that make the most sense.
For sure.
But you guys already have Airbnbs that you guys do the arbitrage method on in Alabama, right?
Yeah.
So
we have 11 of those.
No stranger to holding assets and managing properties. It's just in the mode of like, hey, and it's okay. Like as you're an investor, it's okay to like graduate to different phases. But the cool thing about doing them like this is that you learn how to put together good deals. So then eventually, after you wholesale them, make cash and do your thing, eventually you'll be like, great, I now know how to put together the best deals for the ones that I want to buy for my portfolio and start doing that.
Right.
So this particular property has low equity. It would cash flow as a long-term rental. So with that sort of situation, we can go back to the seller and try to figure out what kind of cash they want to see at close. So with this one, I know whenever we initially put the deal together, if you look back at the original listing, it'll kind of give you a hint of what we actually ended up doing here. And I'll show you guys the real numbers behind it. But we basically bought this for $316,500. So that means we were all in on this deal right around $16,500, right? Between cash to agent and cash to seller. There's two people who needs to get paid. Number one, there's a listing agent. They're not doing this for free. And number two, the seller, right? They want to focus on the cash they want to put in their pocket. So the great thing about this is we didn't have to pay $335,000 to buy the house. By focusing on the cash that they would walk away with, we actually bought it for $18,000 less than what they were really asking for. Okay. And that's just a little hack right there. So with this deal, I can't remember how we ended up splitting up $16,500. It may have been like $8,000 to seller, $8,500 to the agent, not sure. And yes, a lot of times the agent gets paid more than the seller gets paid.
This was the case.
Was that the case? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm making sure because I remember the agent definitely wanted their money on this one. So, so we got it. And when we put together a deal like this, where do we try to typically stay, Steven, on a deal like this?
Yeah, I would say anywhere from 5 to 7% of the purchase price, cash at close. That's including closing costs.
100%. So if you're liking what you're seeing in this video, come join us this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern for our deal evaluating masterclass. Share with you everything you need to know to structure creative deals, cash deals, single family, multifamily, the whole thing. You don't want to miss it. 7 p.m. Eastern. The link is in the descriptions. This is what we look at, guys. We have an extra strategy playbook that we typically run the deals through. Okay, it's almost like a mental flow chart if you want to think about it. So the first thing we'll look at for a creative deal like this is, will it cash flow as a long-term rental? That's what we're talking about. We said yes, it would. Okay, well, how much is the entry? If the entry fee can stay between 5 and 7%, the more things you can do with the property, the better. The bigger the fee you can can go and get for a particular property. It's not really a short-term or mid-term rental market up there. It could possibly mid-term rent, but it's not really a big short-term rental market, right? So with that, yes or no, the different strategies you could use on a deal like this is you could lease it, which is you could rent it out and you can make money on it monthly as a cash flowing rental. Perfect. You could do a lease option, which is you get an option fee at close. And the idea here, why would you do a lease option? Is that way you can get more of your money back at closing, and you can sometimes charge a higher rent rate. You could do a wraparound mortgage, meaning you let someone else buy the property from you and you seller finance them at a higher monthly payment, or you could wholesale it. And because you can do these things, you can obviously charge an assignment fee. If this property not only cash flowed as a long-term rental, but it also made, a couple $1,000s as a short-term rental, and as a midterm rental, it would absolutely crush too, and it was already set up for short-term rentals, like whatever, then yeah, we could probably charge a lot more money for that. But still, being that it was in the situation that it was, we're able to charge good money for this. And do you remember the assignment fee that we got for this one?
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's 12.5. So
$12,500 is what we ended up assigning this deal for. So pretty cool. Again, this is a deal that, number one, you didn't have to pay anything for the lead, right? It was on market. But number two, I think a lot of people throw these types of leads out the window, right? They don't go after these types of deals. Yes, there's steps involved. Yes, there's negotiations and back and forth, and you have to wait sometimes, and there's all the things that you have to do. These deals just don't literally fall off, like literally in the palm of your hand, like, hey, here's $12,500. But the cool thing is that you don't have to spend any money. You just have to spend some time nurturing these deals to close.
Right. That's awesome.
So
yeah, couple months.
Pretty sweet little deal. And that was one of your guys' earlier deals too.
Yeah, I think it was our second deal.
Crazy. So sometimes at this point, after you do the first one, then it's like, holy crap, how can we do more? How can we do more? Let's do more of these for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So you guys have a virtual assistant that helps make some of your phone calls too, right? On your prospecting, because the CRM does a lot of the texting, but for your initial outreach, does a VA do that?
Yeah. The initial outbound call is from our virtual assistant. Yep.
So like, what does that system look like? So we pull a list, we put it into the CRM. Like, what happens next?
Yeah. So we have some KPIs for him every day for that, but he's going to reach out to anywhere from 30 to 40 people. These conversations tend to be a little bit longer. So, just based on like having to explain the whole process of low equity and subject to, or, that kind of creative process. And so just trying to get them on board. But yeah, he just reaches out, just tries to see what the situation is initially. And then he just tries to, pass that along to myself to, get on the call with them.
Nice. I love that. So he kind of takes the first initial screening call.
Right.
So that way, by the time you get on the phone with them, either if you have somebody who's serious, and, you still probably talk to a lot of people who are not really that serious, or like, oh, I didn't know it was like that. But it really kind of helps screen a lot of these people out.
For sure.
Nice. Sweet. Okay. So that is Chantilly. Good little deal. $12,500. All right. Now we're going to look at a deal that you guys did in Tennessee. Before I pull it up, we were breaking down another deal in Colorado, but this one's in Tennessee. Like, what is your feel? Because a lot of people are afraid of going virtual when it comes to doing deals and like changing markets. Was it that different calling in Tennessee to Colorado, or like, what was that experience like?
Not different at all. I mean, it's just everybody. Yeah, I'm sure there's some small nuances with each state, but I mean, if you can just keep it simple with the process of like looking to see if you're just looking for people that are in pain, that have low equity, that are probably going to sit on market for a little bit, because they have to come to closing table, with some cash, and they probably don't have that cash. So yeah, it's just really just trying to see if those numbers will work as well, just to see if it cash flows as a rental, just following that little flow chart that you just showed and just kind of abiding by those simple rules.
Yeah. So you can basically do this in any market across the country,
sure.
As long as they have low equity. They're running to the same people, facing the same problems. They're just located in a different place in the world,
Yeah. You'll find that every conversation is pretty much the same. Like, it's all similar.
Which is great. I like it when it's pretty predictable.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So let's look at this one here off of Heber Avenue. Okay. So this property was in Memphis, Tennessee. We initially purchased it. They had a mortgage against this one. What was the situation like? How did you find this lead, or how did this one come about?
This was done. This was reached out by Harvey, and the agent picked up first call.
And Harvey's your VA.
And Harvey is the VA. Yeah.
Yep.
She was initially skeptical, but understanding that, she needs to, figure out how to get this house sold. I think the couple was it was a young couple. I think this was like an FHA, one of their first houses to buy. They wanted to move. I think they were actually it was going to work out to where like, I think they were wanting to go to Australia or something like that. And,
That's crazy.
and they were just done being homeowners. So I think I followed up and asked if like they're, making sure that are they going to try and purchase something later down the road, see if that could be kind of a, objection down the road for us, but it wasn't. So it was definitely something just trying to get the agent on board first, but then, going into the, getting on a call with the seller as well.
Nice. So initial conversation, Harvey called, we touched base. Cause like, again, this is one of the deals that we look at and we say, all right, well, this person's trying to sell. At the time, they had it listed somewhere in the neighborhood of $99,000.
Yeah.
Right. And $99,000. We were like, all right, well, if you sold it for 99, it would have already sold because they bought it for 90 in 2022. Then it was listed for 105, and then it was listed for 99, and it stayed there for a very long time. It just wasn't moving. So that also gives you a leg up in the negotiations, knowing that, hey, number one, I know they don't have a ton of equity. In this case, they owed $87,000 on the mortgage. We find that out later on down in the conversations. But just looking at those numbers, they're looking to sell for 99, and they just bought it for 90. They're not really going to make anything by the time they pay the agents on both sides. Again, 7% is what we normally account for when it comes to have to sell your home. That's 3% to a buyer's agent, that's 3% to a selling agent, and that's 1% to closing costs. You take $7,000 out of 100, you're down to 93. God forbid they had to make any sort of repairs. They probably weren't really banking on making much money here at all. So, and again, that's if it sold at 99. If it was going to do that, it probably would. Like more than likely, someone was probably giving offers around 90 and the seller's going to have to come out of pocket, just like what you were saying there, Stephen. So in this case, the property, again, you guys saw the photos, didn't need a bunch of work. It is a little bit older, but the cool thing here is Memphis is an interesting market because the first thing that we're going to look at as we identify these low equity properties is number one, does it cash flow? And the thing about Memphis is one of those markets in this country that gets really close to that 1% rule, meaning that property rents out for about 1% of what it's worth. So if it's worth $100,000, it rents out for $1,000. In fact, this property rents out for about $1,050 to $1,100. So what does that do? Well, number one, the higher interest rates that started to happen in 2022 doesn't really affect this market as much because they will still cash flow even with 5 or 6 or 7% interest rates. Like the Burr model is not dead on these types of properties, but this one was one that you guys were like, do we throw this out the window because it has a high interest rate, right? I think it was like almost 6%. It was like 5.85 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And we look at it and we looked at the mortgage and we said, all right, well, the PITI on this, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, like the total payment to own this home was right around $632, right? So I'm like, okay, well, even if with the high interest rate, could it cash flow? And the first thing that we will look at, again, I gave you guys kind of the rough numbers behind it without showing you, but in this neighborhood, it would rent out for in the neighborhood. Like you have one here that's a 3-1 at $1,400. You have another little 2-1 that probably needs work at $800. But somewhere in this neighborhood, depending on the kind of property you bring to market, you could fetch anywhere from $1,000 to $900 to $1,100, somewhere in that range. So the cool thing about this deal was you guys also had a built-in buyer because I bought this one, right? And number two, like why would I buy that? I'll go over that in just a second. But number two, we knew that they really didn't have like much legs to stand on. So I remember getting on the phone with the agent on this one, and I was talking, her name was Brittany, right?
Yep.
So we were talking with Brittany, you guys were there, and we were kind of running through the different scenarios. It was just so much easier to get on the phone with the seller too and do a 3-way call to really hash out the details. And I was basically telling her, like, she was looking to make, $5-6 grand in commission. And I was like, Brittany, that there's not that kind of money here. I could pay you $1,500. And we negotiated and we ended up giving her $3. But the thing about this deal was I gave the agent $3 grand and we gave the seller $5 grand. That was $8 grand total, all in, to buy this house that I knew would cash flow right out the gates at least $300 a month. So it's like, would you buy a property? Would you spend $8 grand to make $300 a month and get the benefits of owning a property? Probably. Sure. Probably. Now, the pipe burst on this one. That's a different story for another time. But anywho, this property would cash flow right out the gate. And it's like, okay, well, this makes a ton of sense. Not only would I buy this one, a lot of other investors would buy it as well. But I personally purchased it to turn this into a wrap, right? Because I knew I could charge a little bit more money. So the fun thing about a deal like this, again, when we go and we look at our numbers and we see that, yes, it will cash flow based on area comps, we'll look at the exit strategy playbook and we'll say, well, it cash flows long-term rental. Yes. Okay, amazing. What's the entry? 8 grand was a little outside of 5 to 7%. It was 8%, right? By the time we break everything down, but I'd still kind of couple it in here because it's not 10% or greater. So then I'll say, does it work as a short term or midterm? No. So then it goes, okay, well, could I lease it? Yep. Is it with cash flow? Lease option? Yep. I could wrap it, which was the better play here on this one, and wholesale. Because guys, our acquisition is always dependent on the disposition. Like what's the highest and best for this property? What can we actually do with it? And this one turned out to be a wrap. So basically what I did is I took this house and I said, great, my monthly payment is $632. I'm all in for 8 grand. I went out, and maybe it'll even show on Zillow. I don't know if it'll show on Zillow. I went out and marketed this property to find somebody who's going to move into it. And yeah, this is me. This is my sell price. So I went out and I sold this property for 110. Mind you, the list property was listed on market for almost 3 to 4 months at 99,000. How does this happen? It all comes down in the structuring of the deal. We knew something. We knew how to put together a deal that a licensed real estate agent did not, because they don't teach this kind of stuff to real estate agents, right? So we went out and we put this deal together, and I said, look, I'll sell it to you for 110. All right. What I want $10,000 down. Check, right? Got that. So that way I can get at least the money back that I had to put into the deal, which was my closing cost and paying Brittany and obviously getting Steva and Sarah paid on this deal. I wanted at least $10,000 down. And then what I did was I wrapped the rest of this, the $100,000, I wrapped at almost 11% interest. So my underlying debt was right at 6, a little bit less than 6. But the new debt that I created on this property when I seller financed to someone else ended up being $1,150 a month, principal and interest. They cover taxes and insurance. That means this property cash flow is a little over $700 a month. And I paid back other people who brought the money as lenders to the deal. So we're cash neutral and it cash flows $700 a month. So pretty neat little deal. And these are the ones that, if I would say, like, as you go out and build your portfolio, these are the ones that you guys are going to want to start keeping, as being able to raise private capital. Cool thing is, like, in the group, I know a handful of people I can connect you guys with so we can start keeping these deals. If we run into another Hebert, you guys are not going to sell that deal to me. We are going to partner on that deal or you guys are going to buy it. But also awesome. But these are the ones that, hey, if it works for an investor and if it's something that you're like, man, I would buy this, you best believe there's people with some pretty deep pockets that would love to buy these types of deals too. So from start to finish, you guys had the conversation with Harvey. I stepped in and I helped with the closing, talking with the agent and stuff. But like, what was the biggest hurdle here? Because honestly, this one went pretty smooth.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest hurdle was honestly, we've never done a deal. So this was our first deal. So seeing the conversation, you actually had this conversation with the seller on No Fluff. So if anybody wants to watch it, they can go on the No Fluff.
Hey, which one was that? Like No Fluff 3 or something? 4, 5, 7?
3 or 4, yeah.
We'll have to go back. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I watched it on repeat just because the seller had some like concerns and like you just crushed every objection that they had.
That was me when I was wearing the cowboy hat and the mustache.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I'll have to try to find that one. That makes it easier. But
yeah. So, as far as conversations, I mean, any hiccups, it was mainly the hiccup was that the agent wasn't wanting more than what we could give her.
Yeah. And that happens a lot. The agents want to get paid. They're like, yeah, my client's good, but what about me? Yeah. What about me? Pay me. It's like, how you're not going to get paid in this house and sell. This is crazy.
Yeah.
This is crazy. So like looking forward where you guys are at now, because you've done a handful of these creative deals and, trying to put together some cash deals. Fingers crossed that we get this one over in Phoenix. What's next? Like, what's next for you guys? Like, if we say like what our goals are for the next, couple months, like what do you guys want to see in your personal business?
I think that we're kind of like in that stage of we're trying to get repeatable business. Like I would say 3 to 5 a month is what would be ideal. We're doing more focused on cash deals, but we're sprinkling in some low equity just from knowing that's how we started this whole thing. And so why not, keep that rolling? And keep so, I mean,
ideally they support each other, right? You can do the cash and creative together.
What's that?
So ideally they support each other. You can do the cash and creative together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's one that honestly, I reached out for an agent here in Phoenix and they said that there's no room for anything for it to be lower than the asking price. And so I immediately went to creative on it. And so we're kind of working out the numbers for this one. And it actually looks like it could be a good Airbnb in Queen Creek.
Ooh. Oh, please. Please.
So-
See, that'll be one we want to keep too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you pay yourself an assignment and keep the deal. You get the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Learn from the best.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for sharing both of these deals and helping me break down these numbers. It's been super helpful.
Yeah, of course, man.
Appreciate you.
Awesome.
See ya.
Later.